Hello and welcome to this episode of the Founders and Leaders series, where we chat with the people who are building the future of research, insights and analytics. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Aneesh Dhawan, who is the founder and CEO of Knit. Welcome, Aneesh. How are you doing?
Doing well. Thanks for having me, Mike.
Where are you joining us from today?
I'm joining you from Manhattan. We are here at the New York Quirks Research Conference.
Great. Very good. And you've had quite a busy time of it recently. You've been out raising some money. Is that right?
Yes, we are super excited to announce our Series A. We've raised $16.1 million, led by GFT Ventures and Sound Ventures. So really excited about sharing the news publicly. We've been sitting on it for a while. We raised earlier this year, but wanted to share with the world today.
Great. So what's that process like? I've never had to be at the hard end of pitching for that amount of money. Is it fairly brutal? Does it take its toll with these existing investors you were already working with?
Yeah. We've been fortunate with this 16 million. We've now raised up just upwards of $30 million over the history of the company. So, some raises were a little bit easier than others. This one was definitely a bit faster for us than ones before. I think primarily just driven by the proof points we've had. I think one of the reasons we're able to put this together so quickly and with partners that we were really, really excited about working with is one, we've just been growing really quickly as a business. We 5x'd our first year or 5x'd this last year heading into the raise. And a big part of that was we've brought on some of the world's best and biggest brands. Today we're working with in a really short amount of time. We've only been around for 2.5 years. I think when we first met, we were just starting. And that really short amount of time, we brought over 60 plus enterprise companies. So these are all businesses well over $1 billion in market cap. And we've just had a really, really great progress in bringing them onto the platform and growing with them. Brands like, T-Mobile, NASCAR, Mars Wrigley have partnered with us on the platform. And we're just really fortunate about that.
Right. So tell me, what does Knit do? If you have to explain it to someone who doesn't know the industry, it's your grandmother, it's whoever, what are all these great companies buying? What is Knit?
Yeah. So the best way to think about Knit is we are the simplest way to go from a survey to a story in a few days. So basically, we've built this AI that helps with every step of the market research process. So we have from the top, it helps you go from business objectives to actually designing a survey for you, fielding that data, qualifying the data, analyzing the data, and then actually gets you to this, what we call a first draft of a stakeholder ready report. So this is a report that you would expect from, one of your agency partners. It has key takeaways, recommendations, next steps. It tells you this narrative that answers your business objectives and research objectives. So our focus is really on that final mile of research, right? How can we not just help you with analysis, but actually getting you to that final mile, that story that you can share with your stakeholders. So that's how we like to frame it, is we go from that survey to story. And I think that's really where we've provided the most value to these, major enterprise brands that have joined our platform.
Okay, interesting. So you describe it as a survey, but what types of data do you collect? Because you have more quantitative inputs as well.
Yeah, so that's a big part of how we get to that story, right? Is combining quant and qual data in one survey or in one data set. So you can think about this as your traditional kind of quantitative survey. We can get really rigorous with the types of quantitative questions we can ask. And then embedded within that quantitative survey are open-ended questions that respondents can respond to with the video response, a 1 to 5 minute long video response. And what we've seen that really unlock for our partners is, one, just get a lot more data, right? Hearing someone talk for a couple minutes is a lot more powerful than having them type up. And then another thing to note is, in today's world, especially with some of the recent news and events happening in our industry, data quality is really, really important and something we do really well, because we can actually see the human responding on the other end and make sure that you're getting data from a real human, but also that it's on topic. So our AI makes sure that they're not only a real human, but they're actually answering within the context of the survey or the question. So it kind of solves for both, right? Powerful data, the ability to storytell and see the human, but also the data quality side of things.
Interesting. Have you seen anyone try and spoof that with an AI avatar yet? Are they good enough to try and fool you? Not yet.
Yeah, so it's a bit of whack-a-mole, Mike. Every time you launch products that kind of combat data quality challenges, people will try to skirt that and get that incentive. So one of the things we've done a lot, we've invested really heavily in our data quality tools. Despite that, we still have the data human reviewed. So this way, we're always kind of one step ahead, right? We always have kind of the ability to see what's coming next and then build tools to prevent fraud there. So haven't seen that yet. We've seen other creative ways people are trying to get around it, but yeah, we've been really good about making sure that the data quality on our platform is the highest.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So tell us some stories then. So you obviously you go from data to story for clients, but tell us your stories or where you're able to share. Is it companies like T-Mobile or NASCAR? Have you got some examples of how they're working with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So happy to share like an example of, and I'll be a little vague about the use case there, but if you ever want to check out specific case studies or use cases, we have them on our website. We have plenty of presentations from our partners talking about how they're using it. But I'll just share this one example because I think it's really powerful in where we provide the most value. So we work with a large retailer that was heavily impacted with the news around tariffs, and it was having a huge impact on their business. So they came to us in the beginning of the week. It was like a Monday or Tuesday with just a high level business and research objective. And we were able to go from that business and research objective to building out the survey to getting it in field to that final stakeholder ready report before the end of the week, right in time for a big leadership meeting they had on Monday. And again, I just want to emphasize this isn't, just a dashboard with some fancy looking visualizations. We actually got them to something that looked and felt like a PowerPoint or Google Slides report, something they could feel really comfortable taking to the highest levels of leadership at, a massive, massive enterprise brand. And that's where the power of knit really comes, right? You have plenty of options to get data really quickly, but even when you get that data today, our partners end up spending a lot of time and effort going from this analysis to what's the story behind this. And we really want to close that gap because ultimately we believe that, we want the researcher to focus on what they do best, which is telling that story behind the data. And so how can we get them to that first draft so that they can either run more research or they can spend more time on that and make research. I think ultimately that'll make research more human when you have humans focused on diving deeper into the story behind their human consumers.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. And did the research tell them that they should call out the effect of the tariffs on the price increases at shelf? So they should have the little tariff tax exposed.
We're looking a little bit higher level at like perception of consumers and stuff. But yeah, I mean, it's been really helpful. They've been running this, over the course of the last couple of months now, just with all the volatility there.
Yeah, great. Tell us, how did you get started? What drew you in to start the business?
Yeah. So, I'm not from the research industry. I'm a very kind of cliche founder journey. I started my first business, right before I went to college, and it was in the influencer marketing space, right? So I'd built out one of the earliest kind of nano influencer platforms, helping connect brands with everyday consumers to, in this case, really promote that brand. So from a really early age, I've always just been incredibly passionate about how do you connect brands with their consumers, help them better understand this, in this case, more from a marketing purpose. Met my co-founder in college. He had a very similar background. And then, cliche founder journey, at least from there, and ended up dropping out, moving down to Austin, raising a little bit of money and working on that business. Unfortunately, that business was very much upended during the pandemic. We got really good at driving store traffic through our platform, and a global pandemic is not the best time to work on a business that drives foot traffic. And so the silver lining behind that, though, Mike, was we had a lot of our customers, we were still working with large enterprise brands at that point, came to us and said, we don't really need your help with driving store traffic, but we love this rich content we're getting from your influencers for marketing purposes. Can we repurpose that to just better understand them? Like, what are they buying? Why are they buying this? Are they eating? What do they stock in their shelves? And that's really where we pivoted into this idea behind Knit, which is, it started off by gathering this rich video feedback from our consumers. And then that was kind of the can of worms that we opened up behind, well, where else can you see efficiencies to go from a a survey to a story, and how can we apply AI to help streamline that process, make it more efficient, and ultimately make the research process better.
Right. So I get the brand, I guess, knitting together different types of data, qual and quant, knitting together the story. I mean, did the domain that you purchased used to be an actual knitting website? Because I think I remember seeing somewhere that it was still profiled as a as a knitting
Yeah.
enthusiast
I
website and
think
stuff like that.
this is one of the downfalls of AI. I think these AI website scrapers still think we are a knitting wear company. Yeah, so yeah, but that's exactly where the name came behind is kind of knitting these threads together of quant and qual, of human and AI. We're big believers in the combination of the power of the two, and that's where the genesis of the name
Yes.
came.
Great. Okay, so that's knit. So, great story there about how you founded the business, the value it creates. If we just take a step back to bit of a higher level, what do you see as some of the trends that are shaping the research insights industry right now? What are the things that you're either reacting to or trying to influence?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'll just start off by saying this has just been a really fun time to build in this industry. I've only really been diving deep into building in the insight space for about three-ish years, but it's just been such an incredible time to build, and I think a lot of it is because of some of the trends that we're seeing. So obviously, you know, if you came to Quirks or IIEX or any of these big conferences 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, I think we were maybe the only one or one of very few that were leaning into AI, and now that's the hottest topic in the space. And one of the trends that I'm really excited about is like, what does that relationship look like between the human researcher and that AI, researcher, I guess you could call it. And we have a pretty strong POV on it. We we've really been coining this term and leaning into this product philosophy of researcher driven AI, where at NIT, we truly believe at the end of the day that the AI is really only as good as the expert human that's driving it. So how do we build a platform? How do we build systems that leverages the efficiencies of AI? It can definitely synthesize data really quickly. It can definitely help you generate that survey really quickly without losing that expert human context, right? Because at the end of the day, no matter how much data you feed the AI, it's not going to have the context that our expert human researchers that purchase NIT and use NIT have on the business. How do you sell this into the CMO versus a different function, the context behind the storytelling and how it shows up, and they're also their business context, right? And so we want to make sure that we've built systems in place so that they're really driving it. They're able to share that context with the AI, and the AI is more of an extension, a way to elevate the work they're doing, getting them out of the nitty gritty, time intensive aspects of research and allowing them to focus more on that final mile. So playing around with that relationship and seeing how others in the space are doing it as well has been something that I've been spending a lot of time with and getting really excited about.
Do you think that's a sustainable advantage for expert researchers, that their knowledge of the context, how to apply it into an organization, is that something that will continue to keep them ahead of the AI tools? Or do you see that gap narrowing? Because it feels like with every release of the big foundation models that, the capability gap seems to be narrowing all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. I am, I'm 100% betting that it is. And we're very much building our business knowing that, or with this belief that in the future that yes, the role of the researcher will definitely change. I think the role of the researcher will look more and more like a conductor of an orchestra, right? It's like, they're kind of piecing together all these different AI agents that are, maybe getting you to that first draft. And sure, that first draft can get better. I mean, the first draft has gotten a lot better on our platform over the last year and a half, right? We can get you, pretty close to the story. But I think what's going to end up happening, Mike, is as these models get better and they can execute and that first draft can look better and better, I don't believe it's going to be perfect ever. And I still think you're going to need that human layer. And what that's going to unlock for the researchers that we work with is, if you go and pull 100 enterprise researchers today, I guarantee you not a single one of them are going to be like, we don't have enough work on our plate, right? We don't have enough questions to answer kind of in the hopper. It's always, how can we do more? And I think this will allow people to do more with the same or more. Unfortunately, for a lot of our, a lot of enterprise brands, the research budgets are shrinking. So allow them to do more with less. But ultimately, like, you need that human. And, you know, we might be wrong about that, but like, that's what we're betting nit on. We're betting nit on the idea that the researcher is going to play a central role, and I might even go as far as saying an even more important role than they ever have before in this AI native world.
Yeah, it's an interesting conundrum, isn't it? Because I see the same as you're experiencing, that even the biggest brands seem to be either keeping their headcount in insights roles static or shrinking it. The demand from their organizations is growing constantly. They want more insights. And there's how do we square that circle? Obviously, the AI capabilities is a component of that. What do you think the risks are, though, in that, in this transition where ideally a lot of the synthesis, the basic work can be done by AI? Do you think we risk losing something in this transition? Do you think there's a danger there?
I think the biggest risk is going to be, how can we think about running research differently, right? Like, let me take a step back. I think, first of all, what I'm most excited about is how research can be more human, and how the process can be more human, right? Like, ultimately, I think, and these two things tie together, which is like, what AI unlocks is it allows us to run research for use cases, for initiatives and workflows that might not have been possible before. We see this all the time, happen all the time with our current customers, where it's, you want to run qual? Awesome. Well, we built our entire workflows and systems around the fact that running qual or focus groups or IDIs, in-depth qual will take 4 to 6 weeks. We're going to have to spend, high five, low six figures on it. And now you've designed workflows and systems that are built around those assumptions. And what that really means is, like, a lot of the time, the areas where you might want to go and talk to your customers, you're not actually going to you're not going out and talking to them. And, even if you take that same assumptions for agile research, right? Like, oftentimes it's more quant heavy. If it is qual, it's very kind of maybe more surface level qual. Or if you're doing agile qual, it might not be scaled at the quant level. So all this to say, like, we have all these assumptions, and, the pace at which enterprise brands move, like, it's going to take a little bit of time to say, hey, there are different ways to do this. And when you compress the time, when you compress the cost, you can now run research for things and for workflows and initiatives that haven't been possible before. So I think that mindset shift, once that happens, will create a lot of unlocks. So I think that's the biggest risk, right? Like, can we as an industry just think differently about where research can be run and where research can support? And going back to, like, making this more human is, I think I'm I'm personally excited about a world where the products and services that I consume, are the people behind them are talking to me and other consumers more to get our feedback and interest. Like, I think it's a really exciting world to live in, where the products and services out there are really filling a need for you. So I see a world where research goes from maybe more of like a cyclical thing, or like a big moment in time thing, to an always on initiative. And I'm really excited about the role that we're going to play here at NIT in helping with that transition.
Yeah, it is interesting. It feels like there's a move to there being more a pipeline of semi-continuous insights feedback. And some of that, I guess, has been in place with some of the customer experience feedback, but it's not very human, like you say. It's a, is it a 0 or a 10? Is it, it's quite a basic way of interacting with people. Whereas I guess you've got to hope that the AI can make this feel a bit more human, interactive. Some of the conversational capabilities that that allow that to happen. Yeah,
Yeah. And I would just reframe that a bit, Mike, in the sense that, like, yeah, we're not expecting AI to make these out, like, make the end story more human. What I'm hoping will happen, though, is that by AI doing a lot of the time intensive aspects, the actual humans can get a little bit deeper and really surface that human story. And so I think that's a big gap that, frankly, if you talk to a researcher, there's always this idea of like DIY tools or software tools are faster and more agile than working with a large traditional agency, and that's totally true. You can get the data back faster, but like data doesn't really mean anything. Just the analysis doesn't really mean it. What's a story behind it? And I feel like that's an area where unfortunately researchers aren't able to spend as much time as they'd like. And I think that's where they want to spend most of their time. And I think will allow them to do that more and more.
Okay, great. What do you think? We obviously AI, huge mega trend, lots of different things that spin out of that. Is there anything that you think is big that people are not recognizing, or do you think there's an underhyped, underestimated trend in the industry that we should keep an eye on?
Yeah, good question. I'll I'll tie that back to like what's possible. I think that's not talked a lot about. And I think it's the reason for that is it's hard. Like you don't know what you don't know
Yeah.
kind of thing. So like and yeah, I'll be the first to admit we're also guilty of doing this at NIP, but I feel like most of what we talk about today, and I use the royal we, like AI, either AI startups or agencies launching AI tools or softwares launching AI tools. It's like, yes, it's faster, it's more affordable. Maybe you can run different types of research like qual at scale. And like that's all true. But I think what if I were to kind of say what the most underestimated impact of AI would be in the market research world, it's like, what's possible now, right? Like, let's rethink the role of insights within these organizations. And I think ultimately it will be a much more elevated role. I think the insights functions will play a much bigger component of how decisions are made within enterprise when you can go and run quick turn research and actually hear from your customers in hours or days instead of weeks or months.
Yeah. Okay. So the stage we're in at the moment for most people is the kind of faster horses era. We can make our existing paradigm cheaper, faster, but it's not really rethinking how this whole thing might work, how you might have more impact or more value.
Yeah. I think that's going to take some time because even if you identify it like going from an idea to actually large scale implementation at, a multi-billion dollar revenue generating brand doesn't happen overnight. And it's a journey that you have to take everyone through. And so again, we're going to play, I think, a really important role for that, especially with our partners. And I'm really excited about that over the next couple of years.
Yeah. Okay. What about the next 2 or 3 years? How do you see, what does the industry look like that's different then than it is today? What are the big things that will change?
Yeah. And like looking at the industry as a whole, there's a couple different trends I'm really excited about. The first is I'll kind of shift gears a bit. I know we've been talking a lot about enterprise brands, and today that's really our focus is working with those large big companies. Many of the logos you'll see on our website are representative of that. But I think one interesting trend is like bringing research, like rigorous, what we used to deem as enterprise quality, enterprise grade research, to people that couldn't afford it or didn't have the time for it. So like think like mid market, like fast growing brands, SMB brands, companies that are just getting started. And look, that's a space that we dabble in a little bit, especially for those like fast growing mid market consumer brands. We have several of them on our platform, and it's really interesting to see how a team of one at those businesses can now run research as if they had a team of 20, right? Like they are just able to push out so much more research and make such a bigger impact. And I think that's really exciting is like bringing those companies into like what used to be considered kind of the traditional market research industry. Like you don't see a lot of those companies at the conferences that we attend and go and talk at. And I think that's a really exciting opportunity is for them to, for them to run the same type of research or have access to the same type of research. The second is I think you're going to start seeing, and again, we are big believers in this, and this is where we're headed. And this, I'm very bullish on this idea of expert human researchers playing a bigger and bigger role. So at NIT, what we've done is we've invested really heavily in an in-house market research team. We've made some incredible hires. We're building out one of the most top tier kind of like market research talent in house. And we're really excited about that because ultimately what we want our partners to experience is we want them to have that experience of working with a true partner, a thought partner, someone that, has been in their shoes, someone that, they can really relate to that understands their industry and the types of research they're running really intimately and really well. And then just making sure that, you know, they're the most efficient researcher in the world because of all the AI that we have powering them. So I'm really bullish on those two trends there. One is, again, bringing in some of those like faster growing mid-market companies into running more enterprise research. And then the second is like that investment in expert humans. And again, we're doing that through our dedicated researcher team. Every single person that works with us at NIT, every one of our partners has a dedicated expert human researcher that they can reach out to and that actually proactively kind of helps guide them through every single research project they're running.
Yeah, interesting. Feels like there's still two camps in this space, which is the one is where you're describing actually the people with the expertise wrapped around AI capabilities that, kind of expand their impact greatly, but still human at its core. There's another strand, which I don't know if you saw recently, the A16Z article about the future of insights and research, very much going in the other direction, which is the future is all synthetic, agentic, fully automated, no need for these annoying overheads that we call humans, So it'll be interesting to see how those two things play out. The reality is, inevitably, I guess, some parts of the industry lend themselves better to more hands-off, highly automated approaches. But it does sound like you're firmly in the camp of the human has a lot more value to add, when allied with AI.
Yeah, absolutely. We were on that market map. And, in some cases, I agree. There are use cases where, it might be a little bit more automated. It might be a little bit more kind of agents in the background doing everything for you. I personally don't believe it's going to be the future for at least the industry and the segment of the industry that we want to serve, right? We are very squarely have made the decision we're going to at least initially focus on the fastest growing or already the largest and kind of brands in the space. And I think for that, you have to just a different approach. So it's really early, right? We're like a year and a half into like a true AI native world, and we'll kind of see where things shake out. But really bullish on it, and yeah, NIT is squarely in the researcher driven AI space. And I would kick myself if I didn't take this opportunity, Mike, because I know there's a lot of researchers listening in on your show, but we are actively hiring the top research talent. We have several roles open right now. So definitely check out our careers page if you're a researcher that's excited about this vision and wants to get involved with it.
All right, we'll add some links so people can go and check that out. Good stuff. So what else do you think is, we've talked about the opportunity, the upside, the growth. I mean, it feels like there's these big territories of, better storytelling, better combining the human and the AI technology. And then there's the, elevating the impact. So, being able to drive more decision-making at senior level. When you look across the industry, what do you think is still happening that shouldn't? Is there a sacred cow that you think should be slaughtered? Are there things that you see people attaching value to and you think that's just not really adding very much anymore?
Yeah, I think it really goes back to that idea of like the mindset shift, right? Like I truly think there are new things that are possible that haven't been possible before. So, one of the things that we always like to challenge here at NIT is this, that saying of like, you have to balance between the three, right? Speed, quality, and cost. And, you have, I'm just very much generalizing, but like on the full service side, you're going to pay a lot more, but you're going to have, you're going to pay a lot more, and you're going to get much higher quality data and it might be a little slower. And then with more DIY self-service, it might be quicker. The quality, by quality, I mean like how far does it actually get you down that path of that story? It might be a little less, but it's more affordable. And I think there's always been this kind of like full service versus self-service. I would say there's also kind of that spectrum from quant and qual, right? Quant can be faster, might not get you as deep, a lot more affordable than qual. And again, just generalizing here, because I know there's like a lot of different areas, and depending on how you slice and dice and define this, it might be different. But I think that's all about to change. Like I truly think with AI, there's a world where you can get really high quality in the data, quality in how close it gets you to that final story really quickly. And you can do it in a way that's affordable, that you're not, breaking the bank, spending an arm, an arm and leg on every single one of these studies. And we've figured out where we want to play in that. Ultimately, I want to make sure we compress across all three of those and truly deliver that vision. And we've made certain trade-offs. Like, we're not going to be the fastest research platform you're going to work with, but I think it's because we're over indexing on quality and getting you closer to that story. But look, like, I think that's all going to change a year or two from now. And with some of the stuff we have cooking up for us, like even in the next 3 months, there's going to be a step change in all of those. So that's what I'm really excited about. And I think, like, again, it's been something that I feel like it's been talked a lot about in our industry and kind of drilled into how researchers think, because for the last decade or so, that's really just been true. And shifting that mindset, I think, is what I would call maybe the thing that we need to maybe focus on a little bit more.
Right. Okay. So down with binary thinking. It doesn't need to be one thing or the other. It doesn't need to be qual or quant. It doesn't need to be cost effective or high quality. You can actually optimize across all of those or combine them. Yeah.
It sounds too good to be true, and it's not true yet. I don't think I'm definitely not saying we're firing on all cylinders on each one of those, but I think very soon it will be. I think you can have your cake and eat it too.
Yeah. Okay. Great. So, tell us some things that other aspiring founders or existing leaders might benefit from your experience. So, what's a mistake that you've made when you've been building NIT over the last 2 or 3 years?
I think there's been many. So I'll try to think about probably the most helpful one to share. Yeah, I think one of the things that we've done a really good job of, but I wish we, like, especially recently, but I wish we, like, really doubled down even earlier, is like coming from the industry, coming outside of the industry. I think we had a very fresh perspective on, and frankly, probably a bit naive perspective on, like, how can we do something different in here? And then we've from a pretty early stage, and especially this like last year and a half, 2 years, we've been really doubling down on kind of balancing this fresh perspective with like deep understanding of our business. And I think that's really where things started to unlock for us over this last year, is like when we built out an incredible kind of technical team, and this team that's really might not have come from the industry, but like kind of, has been in the startup space for a while. And then we paired it with researchers that are really excited about the future of technology in our industry, and can kind of balance both of those things in their heads at one time. And that's been hugely kind of, accelerant for us. So I guess the lesson for me there is, like, at the end of the day, like, the market and your customers are the ultimate guide, and so you can think about things differently and stuff, but if you can't go out and deliver value to your customers, it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. And that value, I think, comes from having a different approach, but also being very cognizant of, like, this is how people think and this is how the way things have been done, and how do you marry those two together? So that's always, I think, something that we're trying to improve on. And we've done a lot of really cool things around that, by the way. We have, like, such an incredible product advisory board, enterprise researchers from all these major brands. We actually have some applications open for that if anyone wants to check it out and maybe be a part of it. But yeah, I think, like, things like that have really helped accelerate the business. And then, the sub theme of that is just people. Like, really, we wouldn't be here today without the incredible team we've built. And over the last year, we've added a lot of new people to that team, and that focus on people is something that I would love. I'm focusing a lot more on, because I've just seen how powerful finding the right people can be.
Yeah. Okay. So external perspective is great to freshen things up, but you also need to anchor it in the reality of the existing paradigms, I guess, that expertise that exists within the research function. Yeah. Okay. What else have you What would be one of your biggest learnings, I guess, from your career so far that you'd want to share with people?
Yeah. 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 I was actually talking to a couple folks on the team about this, and I feel like so much of like momentum and traction really does come down to timing, which is like something you can't really control, right? Like I feel like if we had started this company 4 years, 5 years ago, we wouldn't be having this success we have, just because like AI wouldn't be top of mind. We wouldn't have this technology. So a big learning for me is like, look, that's a little bit out of your control. The thing you can control the most is just like having a very growth mindset and open mindset, obviously showing up and working hard, and then hopefully you can kind of use all of those skills to like figure out, something just slightly ahead of the timing. So very fortunate that we were thinking about this relationship or this application of AI in market research, and we were here pretty early to this idea. And now we can really ride that wave that's happening in our industry, because I do think it's a really powerful application in our space. Like I think I'm very bullish on it. Obviously, I'm betting the next, decade plus of my career on it, but and my life on it. But I think you have to really do it in a way that makes sense for our industry, and at least for the segment that we're serving, it has to kind of be that AI plus human.
Sure. Okay. So pick the right time. Sounds like one of the key learnings that you've had. So a bit of serendipity there as well.
Yeah, maybe framed another way, it's just like what you're working on matters just as much as who you're working with and how hard
Yeah.
you're working, and if not, maybe even a little bit
Yeah.
more.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Well, let's wrap up then with, if you were advising another startup founder in this industry building a research tech product, what's the single most valuable bit of advice that you could pass on to them?
Yeah. I think in today's world, really only, frankly, only like two things matter, I think, at the end of the day. And this is also, I think, can be generalized outside of our industry, but I think is especially true of our industry. It's how deeply can you understand your end customer's workflow, right? We spend a ton of time talking with our customers, going to visit them, grabbing dinner with them, like just really understanding their pain points. Because look, like it's really easy, it's a lot, I wouldn't say easy, sorry, really easy, but it's a lot easier to build tools today and software today than it ever has been. So ultimately, like when you boil it down, the only differentiator is like how well do you understand the workflow, what they're going through, and how quickly can you build to it. And so that's really what it comes down to, is like deep customer understanding and product velocity. Like how fast can you build high quality products for the industry. And then, I think that's kind of what guides the entire, momentum and traction. That's like probably the best indicator of how quickly you'll grow.
Excellent. Okay. That's something I hear a lot from the other side of the table, actually, is I need my tech partners, agencies to understand my need better, my workflows, my team, my pressures. So a great piece of advice to really go deep on
Yeah.
that side of things.
Yeah. And I would just add, I mean, that was a big reason why we went out and raised more money. I think you guys might have covered our last round too. It wasn't too long ago. And we made a very tactical decision that like, look, at the end of the day, we want to really invest in things like this dedicated research team and in the capacity to go and spend the time with our customers to understand how they're running research, where their pain points are, and then be able to build for them. So yeah, it's very much core to our DNA, and a big part of why we're very bullish on this idea of researcher driven AI.
Right. Well, thank you. Thanks for sharing all your insights. Congratulations on the recent raise. And if anyone wants to find out more information about NIT, we have plenty more hosted on the Insight Platform's website. You can just search for NIT in the directory and you'll see lots of other linked webinars, videos, and other resources there to go deeper. Aneesh Dhawan, thank you very much. Thanks for sharing your story, for telling us about NIT and your perspective on the industry.
Thanks so much.
Do come back for our future episodes where we'll be talking to more of the people who are building the future of the industry. Thanks, everyone.